Hello. So before I begin, I just wanted to congratulate and thank the WFA, the entire team, for curating an exceptional Global Marketer Week again. So. And to our Greek host for making us feel so welcome in your wonderful city. Thank you. Okay. So Stefan and Rob gave me the brief. Prove how marketing can save the world in 20 minutes, in a room full of 600 to 800 people who have lost all sensation in their bums because they've been sitting on an uncomfortable seat for 6 hours, who know full well that ingredients for cocktails are being lovingly chopped up about 50 meters behind that wall. So thank you all for staying from my perspective. So my task here is to, oh, that was a wonderful debate, by the way. I could see it from behind, and yeah, it's difficult. I'm really on that team, so I've now got to try and get those red votes back into the green quota here. So my task is to persuade you that any risks involved in putting people and purpose before profit can pay off in the longer term. And I'm going to attempt to do that by exploring the creativity behind some of the world's most effective brand activism, and looking at what this means for the future of our industry and, by default, our planet. And I'm going to start by talking about Marmite. John Hegarty very serendipitously referred to this at the beginning. It's a very British product, part of Connie's Unilever portfolio. And the key thing to know about this is it has an amazing ability to divide opinion. Okay, people tend to either absolutely love its very strong yeasty taste or utterly abhor it. And there is absolutely no middle ground. In fact, an entire advertising platform has been built up over the last few years based on these two opposing tribes. Now, personally, I'm a lover, and I am automatically suspicious of anyone who doesn't like it. Although I suspect that if we can't save the world, one of the last remaining products for us to eat will be those jars of Marmite bought by families that maybe don't like it quite as much 50% of the time. So, now, I'm not in Athens to talk entirely about Marmite, you'd be relieved to know, but the subject of my talk does have the same capacity to ignite heated debate, at least amongst you lovely marketing folk. So brand purpose has been one of the most discussed topics over the past decade, and it's also been probably the most polarizing. So just like Marmite, people either tend to absolutely love the idea of purpose or absolutely hate it. And there doesn't seem to be any middle ground, the same as Marmite. So I'm going to show you very quickly both sides of the argument. I'm going to point to what the lovers will say are the positive commentaries about purpose. There's a recent Harvard Business Review article argued that high-growth companies recognize that an aspirational, differentiated, action-oriented purpose strategy is fundamental to business success. It helps you stay relevant and unified in turbulent times. It then goes on to say that a purpose-driven approach allows companies to broaden their mission and deliver lifetime benefits to their customers. So good stuff. Evidence from Kantar suggests that purpose-led brands actually outperform. I think companies recognized for a very high commitment to purpose enjoy growth at twice the rate of others. And that's largely, I think, because consumers are demanding more from brands and really sort of scrutinizing their ethical practices. How many times have you seen this quote at a conference or in an article? Lovers of purpose point to the fact that even investment-backed BlackRock, this is one of the most kind of aggressively capitalist firms in the world, announced a new standard for investing based entirely around purpose. They describe purpose as the engine for long-term growth across global brands. But for all of the lovers out there, there does seem to be an equal amount of haters and detractors. And these people decry purpose as a patina, a kind of marketing's vain and sentimental attempt to claw back people's trust in brands. You've got marketing academic Mark Ritson. He writes brand purpose off. He says it's mostly nonsense talk, and he insists that it is not an effective way to differentiate your product. And you can tell that he's being serious here because there's no F words in that sentence. Now, the haters point towards research suggesting that we actually shouldn't believe people when they say they want purpose. All those slides you've seen today, ignore them, because according to an HBR survey, only 26% actually stump up in real life when it matters and are not being interviewed by somebody with a clipboard. So they'll also remind you that brands already have a purpose. You know, as effectiveness expert Jenny Romaniak says, it's actually just to sell stuff. It's as simple as that. You know, this is a point echoed by her colleague and Karen's colleague, ex-colleague Byron Sharp, who says that purpose is the marketing industry's way of apologizing to the public, people, or consumers, as you like to call them, for marketing its products at them. It's almost like as if traditional advertising is vulgar and a bit of embarrassment, so we'll distract people with a bit of purpose. So the fact that we've got these incredibly polarizing views around purpose makes the topic pretty confusing. But it doesn't have to be like this. That's why I'm here on stage today, is to argue that if we had a much more nuanced view of purpose, instead of this polarized dichotomy and dialectic, then perhaps things become much, much clearer. So handily, for me, there's a very clever British strategist called Tom Roach, who has supplied a very nicely nuanced way to think about purpose. And he views it in terms of 3 concentric circles. So in the innermost circle, you've got brands that are born purposeful. These are companies that were founded with a very, very clear vision, that they take every decision according to that vision, and they see purpose as being more important than profit. And these are the brands that you see in pretty much every conference deck on purpose. It's the Patagonias, the Tom Shoes, maybe even the Ben & Jerry's of this world. You know, the companies that the evangelists point to when they talk about the power of purpose. Now, these are great businesses. You know, it's pretty much impossible, though, for other brands to relate to them, because their core purpose defines their company's very existence. You think about Patagonia, their core purpose, their mission statement, the first thing you see on the website, we are in business to save our home planet. That's pretty stark, very, very singular. So the next circle down is the corporate converts. These are companies that are aiming to either renew or to create a commitment to purpose as a way of becoming a better and more responsible corporate citizen. So they're looking to sort of balance purpose and profit effectively. You could argue Unilever's been getting a huge amount of love, but it is an obvious example. You know, I think the company was founded originally with purposeful intentions, but it's really over the last few years that it has truly re-embraced the notion of being purposeful. And I think it's done that by sort of supercharging its strongest brands with a very clear sense of purpose, knowing that profits will follow, especially in the longer term. So purpose requires patience, people. Okay, then you get the outermost circle where the pseudo-purposeful brands lurk. You need to try and avoid being in this space, because these are the ones that just seem to jump on the latest bandwagon or cultural movement, despite having no real clear justification for doing so. So these are the brands that the haters like Mark Ritson often refer to when undermining purpose and explaining why it doesn't work and it doesn't differentiate. So I believe that the majority of marketers need to stop looking at the brands that are born purposeful and start to focus on that second circle, the corporate converts, because I think that is the sweet spot. It's because it's balanced, you know, it's achievable, and most importantly, it just makes good business sense, you know. So what I'm going to talk to you now about is I'm going to take you through 3 key principles that I believe sit behind the very best corporate converts. These are the brands that have managed to authentically, that's a really important word, authentically balance purpose and profit in a meaningful way. And to do that, I'm going to look at 3 brands within those principles that I think have done that very successfully by taking a stand. So the first principle forms the opening chapter of the Contagious Commandments book. I'm sorry, I can't afford to buy 800 copies for you and leave them outside, but it is available on Amazon. So the very first chapter of the book is basically to have an organizing principle. So this is to, you know, establish and invest in your organizing principle. And I mentioned earlier that all born purposeful brands are really founded with a clear vision. But I think this is something that the corporate converts, the ones that really are successful, all seem to have this in common too. And I think this is all about figuring out why your business exists. That's a real clear manifestation of a company's reason for existing in the lives of its employees, its consumers, and in the wider world. So from a purpose angle, I think this enables brands to make brilliant ads, you know, but at the same time to help make the world a better place. Now, is that idealistic? Yes, possibly, but so what? I think if you start with an impregnable organizing principle, you can do both. In fact, you can do anything. So here's some in action, some of the sort of obvious organizing principle success stories. I think Amazon became this gargantuan force by having a clearly defined organizing principle, which was to continually raise the bar of the customer experience. Now, Jeff Bezos said this allows or enables Amazon to be stubborn on vision, but flexible on details. And that helps foster this culture of incessant innovation. You look at the other brands, whether they're a startup or a mainstay, they've all carved out an unambiguous reason for existing in this world beyond just selling stuff. And I think this is what guides them on their purpose journey. I think a point to make clear, though, is like, if you look at their core missions, they're not specifically about sustainability or social good, rather about why the brand exists and what it hopes to do for people. So how do you come up with this kind of vision? I think we're going to take a look first at Ikea. So today, Ikea is regarded as one of the most purposeful companies in the world. But 6 years ago or so, the brand had got a serious problem. After 25 years of continuous growth, its penetration, its sales, and its footfall were all falling. And research found that people were increasingly seeing Ikea as a sort of very functional and practical brand. The growing consensus was kind of, I like this brand, it's fun, but it's not for me. So alarmed, the CMO assembled a group of stakeholders from around the company to address the situation. And their response was to come up with a commitment to stand for something, to move away from a very rational, short-term approach to communications to one that injected a clear purpose into the brand. So how did they do that? The team looked into the brand's heritage, and they stumbled across this company manifesto. It was written by the founder back in 1976, and right at the top, in red ink, is the statement, "Create a better every day for the many people." It's a really beautiful sentiment. And I think the team realized that this is the type of company that the founder had always envisioned, and so they needed to reflect this in their brand purpose. So create a better every day for the many people became the organizing principle for the entire brand and everything it does. And I think it's something that guides literally everything they do across every footprint. So for example, some of you might remember Ikea's Disables campaign. This is from Israel, which won the Grand Prix for Health at Cannes Lions in 2019. It was a series of 3D printable plastic attachments that helped people use Ikea's furniture in a much more practical way. And it was built on the insight that 10% of the population struggle to use everyday items, such as getting up on and off a sofa or closing curtains or turning a lamp on due to some kind of physical impairment. So it's a real sort of smart innovation that plays perfectly into the brand's wider purpose, making the everyday better. But it also helped to drive profits as well. These attachments, which you could, as I say, buy and download yourself, led to a 37% increase in sales for those associated pieces of furniture. But it's not just the sort of headline-grabbing campaigns like this where Ikea injects its purpose. It's pretty much visible in any activity, from sort of glossy TV commercials right down to the smallest digital activations. Like this little one for Chinese New Year. This is where Ikea created a digital store within WeChat where every item had a time tag. So if people spent time talking to their family and their friends rather than looking at their phones, they got rewarded with a discount. And perhaps most impressively, I think Ikea has even managed to inject its purpose into SEO, which is where the room for brand building, I think, is, as you'll agree, is probably relatively narrow. So just take a look at this.
IKEA's products have always been inspired by how people live in the real world. There's a variety of everyday dilemmas that can be solved or improved by our products. How could we remind people of this? These days, most of us turn to the internet for answers when problems arise. To prove that IKEA can be a part of the solution, we created what we like to call retail therapy. We simply renamed IKEA's products as common Google searches about relationship problems in Sweden. When you Googled your problem, you found an IKEA product with the exact same name, on a site identical to IKEA's main shopping site. A product that might help you improve your relationship at home. So whether it's a snoring husband, a never-ending gaming son, or any other relationship problem you have, IKEA can come to the rescue. Or at least put a smile on your face while you keep Googling for an answer.
Brilliant. Brilliant. But again, this generated immediate impact for IKEA by massively increasing the CTR. It boosted sales of some of those products by 25%, and obviously it created media interest as well. And judging from your reaction, emotionally connecting as well. So, while a better everyday for the many people is not a purpose that kind of explicitly references sustainability, it clearly has relevance to the challenges facing both people and planet, which is why it influences the actions that IKEA does decide to take, like pledging to produce furniture only made from renewable or recycled materials by 2030. I think the company's environmental ambitions are sort of really coming through loud and clear in the advertising as well. One of my favorite initiatives came from Denmark in 2019, where the brand took a stand against the rampant consumerism of Black Friday. So on the most frenzied shopping day of the year, IKEA teamed up with a classifieds website to urge people to buy second-hand furniture instead of new stuff. And having struck a chord in Northern Europe, the same scheme was then rolled out globally to try and combat ugly retail scenes like this, the end of days. So the same kind of basic guidelines applied. Anyone could take their old IKEA furniture back to a store and receive up to a 50% discount off the original price, and then IKEA then cleans it up and sells it on for a discount. And I think this is smart for these reasons. I think they subverted a key retail tradition, and that initiative guaranteed headlines. It highlights IKEA's sustainability mission, and it creates a sort of mini circular business model. It also helps to change perceptions about IKEA's furniture from, it's just throwaway, it's crap, but it's not, it's actually long-lasting. So all the examples that I've just presented, I think, show how IKEA has managed to maintain that clear sense of purpose, no matter the country or the media channel. And that comes from having a crystal clear organizing principle, like an unambiguous reason for existing. The brand's CMO told Contagious that the organizing principle works like a navigation needle. She says it is the most important ingredient in business transformation, because if you have no brand purpose from a long-term perspective, agility becomes chaos. Agility becomes chaos. But if you do have purpose at the heart of your brand, agility is something that actually helps you to navigate this ever-changing world. And just to underline her point, in the first few years after its adoption, creating a better everyday for the many people actually helped IKEA increase its penetration, and it drove $755 million worth of additional revenue for the brand. So, having a strong and unifying organizing principle is the key starting point, but what differentiates the sort of vast majority of corporate converts from the pseudo-purposeful brands is a dedication and a commitment to that vision over the long term. So Oatly is, again, John serendipitously mentioned this earlier, is a really good example. I think that the core purpose of this plant-based brand is creating healthier people and less damage to the planet. They point to medical studies showing that you're likely to live longer if you adopt a vegan lifestyle. And then the creative approach that Oatly takes to marketing is one of what they call courageous naivety. So courageous because Oatly's mission means this kind of head-on collision with the dairy industry. This is a sector that Oatly sees as being responsible for more greenhouse gases than all the world's cars, aeroplanes, and trains combined. Now, before anyone in the dairy industry starts lobbing things at me, I do know that you dispute that, but that's what Oatly is saying. So an easier target for Oatly would actually, if you think about it, be its own category. Why go after another one when you can just attack your own competitors? But Oatly's Michael Lee told Contagious that as climate change is the defining issue of our time, we see the dairy industry as our biggest competitor, as that's what Oatly wants people to transition away from. So Oatly does know that this stance is going to cause friction and the occasional lawsuit, but the brand's sort of relentless focus on planet and people means that it's a price it's prepared to pay. So he said that as the category leader, if we start focusing on what our competitors are doing, we lose sight of what people are looking at Oatly to achieve, which is helping society switch to plant-based. He said, confess, we get shot at a lot, but somebody has got to take on those fights. So in other words, you've got to be prepared to absorb some of the pain that comes with purpose. And that's a situation that the chief exec, Tony Peterson, is very happy to embrace. He said that his attitude completely changed after living in Costa Rica and seeing the effects of climate change in Costa Rica. He said to Contagious, "My mindset now is that running businesses is not important unless you're doing something good for people and the planet." And that's why he's structured Oatly as a values-driven company. It's based on sustainability, nutritional health, and trust, another word that's come through today. So those three words dictate everything he do, he says, which is why the ingredients and the source of every single product are listed very clearly on the Oatly website. And it still leaves room for very quirky advertising like this, bit of wiggle room. So the message is very, very clear. Purpose and profit can coexist and can provide long-term growth. But the final ingredient that I believe that all purposeful brands must have is a responsibility to go beyond campaigns in order to make a genuine difference. As Tom Roach puts it, if being purposeful means just doing ads to you, you're probably doing it wrong. If you're truly purposeful, not pseudo-purposeful, then you as a brand are going to have to take action first and then figure out how to communicate that second. So the notion of sort of projects, not campaigns, or projects and campaigns, is echoed by FCB's Global Creative Chief, Susan Credle. She said, brands want to play meaningful roles. They're stepping up and they're saying, if institutions are not going to tackle these problems, maybe we have to. And a brilliant example of that comes from AB InBev. So in North America, only 1% of farming in a country the size of America is organic. So if you're a beer brand with ambitions to reduce your environmental footprint and meet consumer demand for sustainably sourced products, this presents quite the obstacle. So their organic brew, Michelob Ultra Pure Gold, decided to confront this issue head-on by incentivizing a long-term, that word again, long-term shift in farming practices. It takes something like 3 years for farmers to change from what they're doing now to organic, during which time their profit margins inevitably decrease. So to encourage them to make the switch, Michelob Ultra created Contract for Change. This is an agreement which includes training. It guarantees buying the farmers' organic ingredients in 3 years' time. But as an extra assurance, AB InBev, parent company, pledged to buy the produce being harvested during that transition period at a 25% premium to be used by the company's non-organic brands. Very circular. So all backed by a very sort of highly targeted, integrated campaign. So AB InBev forecasts that the increased supply of these organic crops will enable the brand to grow, something like 25% by 2023. So this long-term focus on organic does make commercial sense when you consider that 10% of people who buy Pure Gold are new to the category, and that category is continually growing. So the gist here is action first, messaging second. I think this in one slide sums up the difference between a successful, purposeful brand and the majority that fail to achieve that. So don't diss doing good, okay? Purpose is pro-humanity, and the human race needs all the help it can get right now. Okay? So let's recap. Being purposeful isn't about emulating the likes of Patagonia. It's about being a better corporate citizen on your terms. Any purposeful brand needs a crystal clear organizing principle, and that can either come from a founder's vision or it can be manufactured from an insight that is relevant to your brand, your category, your consumers. And any truly purposeful brand will commit over the long term, okay? A purpose isn't something you can just drum up in a Zoom meeting and then easily dispose of. It's at the very heart of your company and its values and its behavior. And it's lived every day through the behavior of your brands. So nor should purpose be something that's just cooked up by the marketing department. I think it should represent your entire brand and go beyond attention-grabbing activations. And finally, you've got to be prepared to piss people off. Just piss the right people off. Okay? Now, you don't have to be polarizing, but any true purposeful brand needs the backbone to really stand up for what it believes in, regardless of who might be offended or alienated. So we're back to love and hate. Because when it comes to purpose, sometimes it makes sense to be more Marmite. Thank you.